There is one thing that you know better than all the child experts. That's your child. If you feel something is wrong, then trust your instinct. The professionals may continue to treat you like a neurotic parent, but you have to keep fighting. The risk of not doing so is that you are proved right and they are wrong. Then you could end up with a child who's a tween or a teenager and they are falling apart and they have no support. My experience of paediatric care is they have an attitude of we must calm the worry mummy. And while that may come from a place of kindness, we worry for a reason. I knew that there was something off with my daughter's development. She wasn't sitting up until around 10 months and wasn't crawling until nearly 15 months. And it was clear there were delays in her speech and language development too. As it came time to start school, I felt that she really wasn't emotionally ready for it. But the nursery workers just said, "Oh, don't worry, she'll be fine, just go with it." Well, I was proved to be right, and she had a massive crisis upon starting school, to the extent that we actually had to reduce her hours to a part-time timetable because she just simply wasn't coping on going in every day. And it didn't end there either. By the end of reception, she was still only doing basic mark making. When I talked to the educational psychologist, they said, well, she's hardly ever been in school, has she? But I knew this wasn't just about the number of hours she'd sat on a seat with a pen in her hand. It was more than that. It was so clearly more than that. Well, I was proved right. I now have a massive folder full of reports that detail her difficulties from everything from cognitive, speech and language, emotional, social, and sensory. And while I was originally told she would never meet the threshold for an EHCP, I now not only have one, but it's on the second highest funding band. And we are in the process of moving her to a special school where hopefully her needs will be better met. So I got there, but boy, why did I have to fight so hard to be listened to? I want to say to you now, if you feel that nobody is listening to you, then I will listen to you. I would like to offer you free 20 minutes of one-to-one parent coaching. And you can tell me everything that you are seeing. Now, I can't give you a diagnosis, but I can tell you where you should be going and how to keep fighting, and maybe we can put a little strategy together and I can just listen and validate your experience. And for me, that was such an important part of my journey, is just having someone who I could talk to who believed me. So I would like to, in the meantime, give you some tips on things that you might want to look out for if you think there is something different about your child's development. Now, as the title of this video says, I am focusing on symptoms of autism, but this is not a diagnosis, and these symptoms do occur in other conditions, so it's not guaranteed that this is definitely autism. So let's start with speech and language, because this is a very big indicator of many things, including autism. If you feel that your child's speech and language is delayed, then speak to someone. Now, I was constantly told we don't do anything about that until they're 3. That is wrong. From the age of 2, a speech and language therapist can be supporting you and giving you some tips on how you support them in the home. And this was massively useful to us and really helped my daughter's speech come along. So keep pushing in. If they say they're not old enough yet, just don't give up, just keep on at them. Another thing you might notice is non-verbal communication. So do they respond to their name? Do they give you eye contact? Do they smile at you? These are some common early symptoms of autism. The next thing you might be noticing is repetitive behaviours. So, do they hand flap perhaps? My daughter used to bang her legs against a seat, and people just used to find it quirky and say, oh, she wants to be a dancer, because there happened to be music on in the background when she was doing it. It wasn't that at all. It was a developmental issue, and we now have that properly diagnosed by an occupational therapist and know why she was doing it. They may also have some sensory sensitivity. So do they cover their ears and get extremely upset when maybe a siren goes past, or you put a hand dryer on? Or are they very sensitive to bright lights? Or do clothes feel really uncomfortable with them? Do they prefer to be naked all the time? These are signs of sensory processing difficulties. Now, sensory processing difficulties can exist by themselves, but they are also a symptom of autism. And if you are seeing these things, you need to flag them up and hopefully get them an assessment. And the final thing is pretend play. Now, children in the early stages will not engage in pretend play. They will engage in parallel play alongside another child, and it will be very simplistic and basic. But there is a stage at which you would expect to see that developing. It's around 3 years old. So if you are seeing other children doing it and yours is not, then that could be a cause for concern. You may want to go and speak to your child's nursery and ask them how they're seeing your child play there. I'm sorry to tell you this, but sometimes they do notice things like a child always playing by themselves or not engaging in pretend play, and they simply don't tell the parent. So go in and do your own investigation work and give them a bit of grilling if you need to find exactly what they're doing, because you want to pick up on these things before they start school. So some people might say, well, all children do this. All children get upset by loud noises, and lots of children will not speak until a certain age and be completely fine. Well, okay, fine, that is common, but I say trust your instincts. And if you think that there is a whole cluster of things going on and a very significant difference between your child and other children, then go with that instinct. This is obviously easier if you've already had one child before who is typically developing, but it is harder for those of you where this is your first child or your only child. But I would still say trust your instinct, because I was proved to be right, and I know so many other parents who are also proved to be right. Now, the other thing people might say is, but is this definitely autism? Well, as I said before, no, not necessarily. It could be something else. It could be that the speech and language difficulties are developmental language disorder, and the sensory difficulties are just sensory processing disorder. But the best thing to do is to get it checked out with a professional. And if they are fobbing you off or stalling you, then keep on fighting. As I said, I would like to support you if you are in this situation, because I know how hard it is doing it alone, and you shouldn't be doing it alone. So I'm going to pop a link in the description where you can book a free 20-minute coaching call with me, and we can chat through what you're seeing, and I can give you an idea of your next steps. I hope you found the content of that video useful, and it's given you some encouragement to keep on pushing if you feel there is something wrong. I've got some other videos that I think you might find useful, especially if you are seeing sensory processing difficulties in your child. So that's things like sensitivity to clothes or loud noises, or just constantly on the move. This is known as sensory processing disorder, and you can help support your child with these difficulties at home. And this video here gives you some ideas and tips on what you can be doing if you are struggling to get through to a professional who can help you. So check that out, and I hope you find it useful.